I'm Government Affairs Director with the Linked Learning Alliance, and we're pleased to be joined by Dr. Carolyn Zachry from the Career and College Transition Division of the California Department of Education. This is the first in a series of CTEIG webinars, which will take place on Fridays in July at 10 a.m. This is the Permissible Expenditures webinar. Next week will be the CTEIG Year 2 Guide for New Applicants. After that will be Strategic Budgeting for District Sustainability. And then we'll skip a week and have on July 29th, establishing high-quality CTE pathways. In today's session, we'll cover goals for this webinar, as well as formal CTE program guidelines, a review of the linked learning approach, and most importantly, a detailed question and answer session made up of questions submitted by the audience in advance of this webinar. The goals for this webinar are that the webinar will help provide clarity to grant recipients for spending CTEIG grant funds within program guidelines, and identify how to use grant or matching dollars on linked learning pathway implementation. The webinar is aimed at current CTEIG recipients, so if you will be applying in the future for your 2 funds, tune into next week's webinar. Formally speaking, the CTEIG's guidelines say that it is a state education, economic, and workforce development initiative with the goal of providing pupils with the knowledge and skills necessary to transition to employment and post-secondary education. Year 1 funds were distributed recently in 2016 for the 2015-16 year and are available for CTE investments that, according to statute, quote, encourage and maintain the delivery of career technical education programs during implementation of the LCFS, and according to the application, meet the 10 elements of a high-quality CTE program. These elements of a high-quality CTE program are laid out on screen. These are also available on the CDE's website, and I will review them briefly here, but they should be familiar to all of you. So first is that they would need to offer high-quality curriculum, providing a coherent sequence of CTE courses that enable pupils to transition to post-secondary education programs. Second, that they provide pupils with quality career exploration and guidance. 3, they provide pupil support services. 4, provide for system alignment with post-secondary educational institutions documented through formal written agreements. Sorry, we're having a slight technical difficulty. It seems we have reached capacity, and so we'll address that quickly. Bear with us while we try to solve this problem quickly. Thank you. Again, we're trying to address a small technical difficulty, and we'll be right back with you shortly. Well, thank you for that. Hopefully we've solved that problem. If you have colleagues who are not able to get on, don't worry. This is being recorded and will be posted online after the webinar. So continuing on with the high-quality CTE program elements, number 5 is the program would form ongoing and structural industry and labor partnerships. Number 6 would be to provide opportunities for pupils in after-school, extended day, and out-of-school internships, competitions, and other work-based learning opportunities. Number 7 would be that they reflect labor market demands, high-skill, high-wage, or high-demand occupations, and is that they would lead to an appropriate post-secondary training and employment. And it's that courses would be staffed by skilled teachers or faculty. And finally, programs would report data to allow for an evaluation of the program. Now we'd like to briefly cover the linked learning approach, which will give context to how the Linked Learning Alliance and Linked Learning programs view CTE Incentive Grant. So the linked learning approach integrates the following 4 components. These are rigorous academics, sequence of high-quality career technical education courses, work-based learning, and supports and services for students. As the CTEIG relates to linked learning, CTEIG funding can be used for building and developing linked learning pathways as long as the dollars meet CTEIG guidelines. For example, we could include CTE curricula, staff teaching materials, actual infrastructure items, as long as they are aligned with the linked learning approach. Have more questions, but rest assured, more information on linked learning alignment will be covered in future webinars. At this point, we'd like to hand it over to Dr. Carolyn Zachry to answer questions from the field on the following topics. There are a number of questions under each topic, which will be divided into general questions, staffing, infrastructure and facilities questions, questions about professional development, about materials, and about work-based learning experiences. Jared, please take us away and ask first question.
Okay. Question number 1 under our general questions. We have been told that classified employee salaries are not allowable under the grant. What if the employees are working on facilities upgrades allowed with CTE Incentive Grant dollars, such as a new CTE workshop? Will we have to contract out for this work?
So we've added some additional clarification on classified employee salaries, and certainly this would be an allowable expense, but it would only be that person's time that's related to the facility that they're working on related to CTE. So you need to think about these dollars when you're looking at classified staff as how is it related to the work of the grant and supporting your CTE program. We want to ensure that we're not paying, in this case, perhaps this facility manager's entire salary, and only 1/10 of their time is related to career technical education facility improvement.
Thank you.
Number 2, in terms of the 11 elements of a high-quality CTE program, what level of progress must be demonstrated against the criteria for the grant to be renewed? Does the no answer have to become a yes?
So this is a kind of an answer to this, only because every district is different and every district was at a different level when they answered the questions yes or no. So what we're really looking for is progress. Districts who answered no are ready to be able to say yes now. Other districts might still have to say no, but are able to demonstrate that they've made progress. So there is no scale, there is no, this is very subjective, unfortunately, but we'll be looking for progress made toward your LEA being able to say yes to all of those in the future. But we know that some folks were starting off brand new, and so they needed to have time to develop their program. So they might still be saying no, but they will say, this is what we're doing, and this is how we've gotten closer.
Thank you.
3, my district plans to use funds originally budgeted from the LCAP to its CTE programs and supplant that funding with CTE Incentive Grant funds. Is acceptable as long as minimum matching is met based on the grant allocation?
Well, this is a caution. Certainly, there is nothing in the legislation that says you can't supplant. However, if your district is supplanting, how will you then sustain your programs? There's also another piece of the legislation that requires that you have career technical education in your LCAP. So it would just be a caution. This would be a big concern of ours over the whole sustainability piece. If you're replacing your dollars, if you're supplanting, how are you really going to sustain your program when dollars go away? And that's what we do not want to see in our state, is we don't want to see career technical education programs that one has invested these dollars in, as soon as the grant dollars cease, to go away. And now we're no longer providing those wonderful services for students and programs.
Thank you.
Funds toward integrated courses, CTE and A to G eligible, or integrated course and lessons / unit development.
So this is another one of those questions that doesn't have a straightforward, this is exactly how you're going to do it. When we look at the 10 elements, there's nothing specific in there about integrating courses or academic courses. The focus of this CTE Incentive Grant was to really expand CTE programs. So again, you can use these dollars if you're looking at a linked learning approach. You can use these dollars for the whole CTE side of that. You can use dollars for your CTE teachers, but for your regular academic teachers, you'll need to use other funding. Again, that's a place where you can use your, you can use dollars to match.
Good. Into the staffing questions. Because of the prohibition of classified employee salaries, what are the suggested best practices for managing and administering the grant under these constraints?
Well, first of all, your district is to take indirect dollars, indirect funds under this grant, and so those direct dollars should be used for those classified staff. And as I answered the first question under general questions, you can use these dollars for classified employees, but again, they have to be very specific to the grant. For example, we have LEAs that are using classified staff to do work-based learning and to help provide or develop work-based learning sites for students. Not a certificated position, it's a classified position. And that's clearly related to one of the 10 elements in the grant. So if you're managing and administering the grant, that's really where your indirect costs fall under. Looking at other opportunities for meeting those 10 elements that your district requires a classified employee, then you can use these dollars for that time period that are focused on developing that specific event.
Can districts use CTE Incentive Grant funds on a non-CTE teacher to serve a CTE-funded purpose? And can they use those funds on courses with a co-teaching model that includes a CTE credentialed teacher and academic subject teacher?
This is very similar to a question 4 under the general questions. And you're really using these dollars with your CTE teacher and that CTE side. This is another opportunity for your district to do some of the matching. Just remember that you don't have to do line by line match, but this is an opportunity for your district to do matching with that. So again, it's that focus on CTE. If you look at the legislation, moving CTE forward.
Thank you.
Maybe incentive grant funds for indirect costs related to facilities upgrades, for example, fees for architectural drawings?
You can use your indirect costs in your district for whatever your district deems necessary. We are talking to to districts that are wanting to use CTE incentive dollars for their architectural fees on a case-by-case basis. And the caution being that we want to ensure that what's happening is that the portion of those architectural fees that are related to perhaps the CTE building is what you're paying for, and that you're not paying for the whole project. We have districts that are doing modernization. They were able to get bond measures passed. They're in the throes of doing modernization. Part of their modernization project includes updating CTE buildings. My staff and I would be okay with using CTE Incentive Grant dollars for that portion of building project and those architectural fees. But again, remember this is for CTE, so it's not to resurface your basketball court or to pay for the turf on the football field. And so you make sure that that portion is really just those architectural fees for the CTE part.
Great, thank you very much.
I think I'll bridge this one just slightly. I understand that funds which have not been encumbered or otherwise legally obligated are to return to CTE by the end of the grant period. Will funds be considered encumbered or otherwise legally obligated to be used for facilities upgrades, but the project is delayed beyond the conclusion of the grant performance period due to forces outside of the LEA's control?
So we're well aware of DSA's backlog, and I am actually working with our fiscal division on finding a solution for this. And so please stay tuned. More information will be coming probably in this next, today's the first day of our new fiscal year, but probably in the fall there'll be that information. Remember, year one dollars, you have until June 30th, 2017 to spend those. So we still have some time, but we do know that DSA is backlogged, and that is outside of your control. So we are working on a solution.
Thank you.
Community
professionals to get CTE credentials in to fund current teachers for the same?
So you can, our recommendation is that you use a stipend for this. Most of your contracts have the opportunities for you to give teachers stipends to further their education or to get additional credentials. So you can certainly use these dollars to give them a stipend. Our strong recommendation is that you set some benchmarks for them before they're given a stipend. So perhaps it's that they need to finish a certain amount of coursework, or they actually need to have the credential in their hand, or you can give them benchmarks, an X amount of dollars after they finish one course, and then this course, and so on and so forth. But rather than giving them dollars up front, this incentivizes them to finish their program.
Great, thank you.
CTE Incentive Grant funds be used to develop externship programs that provide continuous learning opportunities and connect classroom learning to career expectations?
Absolutely. That is one of the 10 elements.
Thank you.
What definition is CTE using to identify equipment? For example, one item with a value of $5,000, but does a computer cart build laptops count as one item, or 31 distinct items, one cart and 30 laptops? From an accounting perspective, the cart would be treated or could be treated as one item. We'll break it into two parts. What definition is CTE using to identify?
So it's the federal definition, and it's a sole item. So it's a sole item of $5,000 or more, excluding shipping and tax and all the other fees that go along with it. If your item is $4,500 and your tax and shipping put it into $5,000, then it's not capital outlay. Again, looking at the example that's given in the computer cart, from our Perkins perspective, we see this often where folks are getting computer carts, and we do not look at that as capital outlay. Those individual laptops have an individual price associated with them. So this would not be considered a capital outlay expense.
And thank you for that. And the second portion of the question, will there be job aids and workflow maps to help us identify when something is capital equipment and when it is not?
I'm not quite sure what that means, so I'm going to just reiterate that anything that has any single item with cost $5,000 or more is considered capital outlay or capital equipment, and anything less than that is not.
Good, thank you.
Is there a process, will equipment need to be tagged with program-specific tags, and how often should inventory be conducted?
So you do need to have an inventory. It's actually in education code. I actually didn't write that code down, but it is an education code, and state education code that you have to have, and every district has to have a historic inventory. And so all your inventory should be tagged with some type of an asset tag that your district uses. Again, this is a local decision on how it's tagged. The individual tag does not need to say CTE Incentive Grant on it. However, on your historic inventory, think Excel spreadsheet, there's a column for fund source, and that's where you would put in there either the resource code for the CTE Incentive Grant, or you would put in CTE Incentive Grant. Some districts do multi-funding for their big equipment, so you might have 50% for Perkins, 50% CTE Incentive, or you might even do 33, 33, 34 for incentive, CTE Incentive, and Perkins. So again, it's however your district has set that up. That education code also says that an inventory should be conducted every 2 years, that you should be going through. Our recommendation for all CTE programs is that you actually do an inventory check every year, that it's part of your teacher checkout process, where checking out for the summer gives the opportunity to ensure that all of their equipment has been returned back to them from students, and it also gives them an opportunity to ensure that any equipment that needs to be repaired over the summer can be repaired over the summer. It's a great opportunity for teachers to just sort of check in to see what they have. Also allows them to think about over the summer what equipment they're going to want in the next couple of years to update their program. And we do have a spreadsheet that we will work to make available on my chalkboard.
Great, thank you very much.
Can grant funds be used to pay for CTE-aligned curriculum materials, like those provided by Project Lead the Way, which don't include credentialed teachers and is not permitted under Perkins?
So again, the teacher has to have that CTE credential for you to be able to buy those curricular materials. And so yes, it has to be CTE-aligned curriculum. We're being taught by a CTE credentialed teacher.
When and under what circumstances can districts use funds on career and technical student organizations?
So we highly encourage CTSOs. A wonderful way for teachers to truly embed leadership in their everyday classroom opportunities for students. Give students a strong foundation on leadership, community service. So what we've seen is that just are paying teacher stipends for the teacher who is the CTO advisor. They're paying for student travel. Now you can't pay for their or their meals for the students. You can certainly pay to get them to state conferences, regional conferences, regional trainings. There's many trainings that are involved with CTSOs. So those are what you can pay for, but again, you can't pay for the individual student meals. You pay for the individual student lodging. You can pay for the teacher, the advisor. You can cover all of that because that teacher's on travel status. The other piece that you can also pay for are the affiliation fees. And so most student organizations have gotten out of individual student membership fees and are doing affiliation fees, and you can pay for those both out of CTE Grant and Perkins.
Great, thank you. 2 more questions left.
Paying for classroom visitors, such as docents and consultants who don't require a credential? How about business and industry professional teachers or honorarian?
So, there isn't a limit. This would fall under your 5,000 category, which are contracts and services. There's a limit on that. Individuals that have a business and industry professional teacher credential are credentialed teachers, and they can be in the classroom and be supported because they meet that requirement. And again, honorarian would probably fall under your 5,000 category. So there isn't a limit on those.
And this is the last question that was submitted before the webinar.
Okay.
Funds be used for work-based learning experiences, such as student transportation to a CTE-aligned job site?
So if you're taking a bunch of students to a certain job site, yes, they can. If it's part of their school day, yes, you can. Ensure that you're doing, your district is covered for liability in that area.
Thank you very much. So that concludes the Q&A section and the webinar. We hope that answered all of your questions, but of course there might always be one that didn't get addressed. So if you have any questions that you would still like to direct to CDE, you can see the phone number and email address for the department up on the screen right now. Thanks. We'll leave that up for a moment too, and we hope you'll be able to join us at next week's webinar on Friday at 10 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Thank you.